Okay, where we left off on Monday was talking about experiments with more than one independent variable. These are called factorial designs, and we talked about how to interpret tables and graphs for factorial designs. Um, when you complete your study and you have results to write about, to explain, to share with your reader, you can write about the main effects and the interactions. And when you talk about a main effect, what you do is you ignore the other variable. So we could talk about the effect of the kind of training or the effect of the kind of test. So there's a main effect for training type, such that the vocabulary training group scored higher than the no training group. So here's the vocabulary group 4 and the no training group 2.5. So clearly they did better with the vocabulary training. And notice there's no mention of English or French. There's no main effect for test type. So here we're talking about 3.5 versus 3, and that's a small difference, and we're going to say it's not significant, and so there's no main effect. And when we're talking about that, we're not talking about the training versus not. Okay, so when you're describing the main effect, you do not mention the test type and vice versa. So talk about one or the other and ignore the other one. Interactions, you try to tell a story. So you just explain what's what. And usually the way to go is what's called a simple main effect strategy. And what that means is you pick a level of one and talk about the values of the other. So you pick verbal, and then you talk about no training versus training in verbal. And you talk about math, and then you talk about no training versus vocabulary training in math, for example. So you might say something like, there's an interaction such that for verbal tests, vocabulary training did better than no training, but for math tests, the two training groups scored the same. And you can see that describes this graph here. Some more interactions, another example. So every interaction is a little different, so there's no single sentence structure, but if you try that simple main effect strategy, that usually works. So here we can talk about the water's edge and the learn at water's edge and learn underwater, and we can talk about underwater and learning in those two places. So we could say something like, when people recall at the water's edge, they do better if they learned words at the water's edge. When people recall underwater, they do better if they learned underwater. So that pretty well, you start at one and talk about these two, then you go to the other one and talk about these two. A little different way of doing it is the results of this aggression and alcohol study. And the interaction here says drinking makes everybody more aggressive, but this is especially true for heavy men. And you can see that describes this interaction here. So you just tell the story in the best way that you can, and that's what you do for describing the main effects and the interactions. So we talked about what the main effects and interactions are and how to describe them. Now, what we did was the simplest kind of design you can have with two independent variables. So we had two independent variables, and each of those had two levels. So it's called a 2x2 design. And we had, be quiet, you can hear my cat. So we had independent groups designed, so each person was assigned to exactly one treatment combination. And that doesn't have to be the case. So we're going to talk about within groups factorial designs, where people are assigned to all the different the treatment combinations, and then mixed designs where they're assigned to some but not others. And we'll also talk about increasing the number of levels. So we did a 2x2, and we're going to have fancier, more complicated ones. Okay. In an independent groups factorial design, the two IVs are studied as independent groups. So in a 2x2 independent groups factorial designs, in a design like that, there will be 4 cells because there's 2 levels of each. And each person who is a participant will see exactly one of those 4 cells. This is known as between subjects factorial design because the cells go between the people. People are only in one. All right, so in a within group, what you do is you have all the people go to all the conditions. So in the in the alcohol priming study, where we had the alcohol photos followed by neutral or aggression related words. You remember the alcohol prime followed by aggression words, people are quick to respond, and then the plants followed by the neutral words, people are quick to respond. If we have 12 people per condition, the first 12 would be in this cell, the next 12 would be in this cell, the next 12 would be in this cell, and the next 12 would be in this cell. We'd have 48 people altogether, 12 times 4. If we did the same study within groups so that each person sees each cell, then we have 12 and the same 12 and the same 12 and the same 12, and that's a total of 12 people. So you can see that's quicker, easier, cheaper to run. You may or may not want to do that. Here, person only sees one cell. There's no worry about order effects or carryover effects. You don't have to worry about a person seeing the design of the study and figuring out what you're trying to do. Here you have to worry about all that stuff. So order effects, you'll have people go through in different kinds of orders. If you're worried about carryover, you may or may not be able to do anything about that. And you can't do anything about them figuring out the design. So, if that's a concern, then you might not want to do this. The mixed design has people see all of one factor conditions, but just that one factor. So we've got people here, 1 through 12. They see the alcohol photo, they get the neutral words. They see the alcohol photo, they get the aggression words. Here they got the plant photo, they got the neutral words, plant photo, they got the aggression-related words. So here we've got first 12, and here we've got the second 12, and that gives us 24. So sometimes you want to do this if you are worried about people seeing these two conditions. For example, you didn't want them to see both because they'd figure out what was going on with the prime. Here again, you have order effects, carryover effects, and so forth to worry about. If you did actually, instead of showing people a photo, you gave people alcohol, then you'd have to worry about carryover effects from one condition to the next. So they still have alcohol in their blood, or they hung over by the time they get here. So that kind of thing would argue for going back over here, at least for the, well, if you're gonna have individual people in each group, then you need to do that throughout. You don't want to have the alcohol people be one group and then the other 3 groups be the same. That's not going to work. Okay, so that was the independent groups where each person is assigned to exactly one. The within groups where people are assigned to all, and then the mixed design where they're all the levels of one variable, but they're only in one variable. So here we've got increasing the numbers of levels for the independent variables. So here we have the same study with cell phones and driver age that we did before, but now we've got 3 phone conditions. So we got a hands-free cell phone, we got a handheld cell phone, and we got the no phone. And you can see how long it takes people to brake in the simulator. We got the younger drivers, we got the older drivers. And you can see the results here. The younger drivers are quicker than the older drivers, and it's pretty much parallel. So there's just a boost for being younger in this study. And here we've kept the 3 conditions for the phone, but now we split up age even more. So 20 to 29, 30 to 49, 50 to 69, 70 plus. And you can see the graph of the results here. The 70 plus have problems here with the hands-free cell phone. They have a hard time braking when that's the case. So, but everybody does better with no phone than with a phone. So the other thing to know about this is in labeling the designs, people talk about the levels of the factors. So this has got 2 factors, and it's a 2 by 3, so it's 2 ages by 3 phone. And this is a 3 by 4 factorial, so we have 3 cell phones by 4 ages. The 3 by 4 and 2 by 3, that's just a matter of convenience. You could say 4 by 3, or you could say 3 by 2, or however you want to do it. It's just whatever you like, you're allowed to do. So whenever you see an X, that means there's another variable, and when you see the numbers, that means how many levels the independent variable has. Okay, identifying factorial designs in your readings. So it's pretty easy to do this in a journal. For a research article, they're going to tell you it's a factorial design. They're going to have the nomenclature like you just saw. In a popular press, they won't say that, but they'll give you the clues, and they might say it depends, or they'll describe it in such a way that you'll be able to tell that there's multiple factors and there's an interaction if there is one. So in a journal article, if you go to the method section, there'll be a notation. A 3 by 2 by 2 would be have 3 independent variables, and the first one has 3 levels, and the next 2 have 2 levels each. It's 3 by 2 by 2. If it's 3 by 2, then there's only 2 independent variables, and the first one has 3 levels, and the second one has 2. The results section will give you a table, or it will show you in the text. We have this main effect that was significant. We have this interaction that was significant. And they'll list them. If there's 2 independent variables, there's 2 main effects and 1 interaction, and they'll list them each and every as being significant or not. They'll either say significant, or they'll put p is less than 0.5, or they'll put an asterisk in a table, and down at the bottom it'll say note p is less than 0.5 or something like that. If it's an analysis of variance, either it'll say MANOVA or F for ANOVA. So that's how you can tell. It's pretty easy in the empirical journals. In the popular press, you can look for it depends, and also you should be looking for participant variables. So the reason you want to do that for age, gender, and ethnicity and so forth is because people aren't always careful about drawing causal conclusions. In an experiment where you randomly assign people to treatment conditions, you can talk about causal conclusions if the experiment is designed well. But with participant variables, age, gender, ethnicity, and so forth, you can't draw a causal conclusion that age or gender or ethnicity caused something. It could just be related to something else that's really the cause of it. So when you read the popular press, they're oftentimes not very careful about making that distinction. So here's an example of an interaction in a popular press, and I'm going to read it to you. It says, students were also asked to envision meeting someone new and then choose how they'd make a good impression from options such as arriving on time, wearing clean clothes, smiling, and looking relaxed. Some students answered the group stereotype questions first, so they'd have group-related stereotypes in mind when they got to the first impressions questions. Others completed the study the other way around. So you can see there's a prime for stereotypes versus no prime for stereotypes. The results showed that thinking about stereotyping changed people's behavior. Overweight students who first answered questions about obese people were more likely than other participants to rank wearing clean clothes as a very important way to make a good first impression. Normal weight students and overweight students who hadn't been primed to think of stereotypes were more likely to prioritize arriving on time. So you can see there's an interaction there for because you get a difference between normal weight and obese people in the response to the prime, and you don't get that in the other condition. So you get one of those it'd be shaped like a wedge. So the normal weight in the prime and everybody in the non-prime look the same, and then the obese people are higher in the prime condition, but not in the afterwards condition.